If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out the Facebook page and give it a like at facebook.com/Bigfoot Crossroads. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast.
I'm Chris. I am from northern New Jersey. I had a pretty scary and significant encounter with what I now know to be a Sasquatch when I was probably 12, 13.
Chris, thank you for joining me on Bigfoot Crossroads, man. It's good to hear you.
Yes, good to be here, man. Absolutely.
I went back over your email that you originally sent me, our original exchange and everything. And man, you must have had a really traumatizing encounter.
Yeah.
Why don't you just kind of, if you could, just, go back in that place mentally and kind of walk me through the story of what all happened, what led up to it, and, the events afterwards.
Yeah. And, forgive me in advance. I can still have some, trauma responses, I think, going back to it sometimes. So if I choke up or whatever, not crying, but like if I stop, and that's just, I guess, me going back to it. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course. Take your time.
So I loved nature when I was younger, and my parents would set me up on, camps and like summer camps and nature walks, stuff like that, like when we weren't in school. So I still forget the exact name of it, but there was one camp, I think I was in 8th grade going into 9th grade. No, maybe 6th or 7th. It's hard to remember exactly, but I know I was like 12, 13. It was called like the outdoor lab camp. So right by our neighborhood, we had this little building on like a nature preserve, like little, not really a preserve, but like the town protected it for learning and science, and it was called the outdoor lab. So every summer they had a program where you would go hiking to different places in the tri-state area. So when we went to this trail where I had the encounter, initially when I had done the first interview with Shannon, we're actually going way back, Sasquatch Chronicles, and then I did another one with Shannon on hers, but I had said it was Bear Mountain State Park, and I've been since researching that. I don't think it was actually Bear Mountain State Park. I think it was just somewhere in the Highlands, up by Harriman State Park. I'm pretty sure that's where it was. So northern New Jersey going into New York. I don't even remember the exact trail. All I remember, it was either called Lemon Squeezer. I'm pretty sure it was called Lemon Squeezer. I think you could look that up, and that might not even be the same place I'm saying. I just know the trail is called Lemon Squeezer. So, we got on a few. We would go to Harriman, and, we'd bounce around to other places. I remember we'd go to like High Point State Park. We went there quite a few times. There's a state park in Ringwood, New Jersey. So we go to Ringwood State Park. So we go to a whole bunch of other places, besides just this one place I had the encounter. And, I was too young to like really care about, looking on a map and seeing where we were going, etc. So I didn't really have like, an objective view of like, hey, we're going to a place that has, this much acreage or whatever. So, I was young, and, the lab set up where we're going, and that's where we're going. So the day we went to Lemon Squeezer, as I believe it was called, I got there in the morning, we get on the bus, usually like a few hours, or anywhere between 40 minutes and a few hours, depending on where we're going. Because we did go to Pennsylvania for some trails. We went to New York. So this one was probably like an hour and a half bus ride. We get there, we do our usual hike, around. I remember, going up a rocky outcropping, a few hills. You'd go up, you'd go down. I remember we got higher in altitude as the hike went on, and it was a pretty strenuous hike. And I remember we stopped for lunch, and I snuck off. And I know I'm kind of going fast here, but I remember we stopped for lunch, and I snuck off with a friend to smoke a cigarette.
Being bad kids.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know how to inhale at the time. So, just puffing and blowing it out. I didn't even know how to inhale. Kids would make fun of me. So we walk off, probably like a 2-minute walk, I would say, 120 seconds. And there's a like raised little hill like to my right when we stop and we light up. I don't even remember if we lit up or not, because I remember people had asked me that question, like if the smoke, and I don't remember. I don't know if it was before I lit up a cigarette or if I did light it up. So I can't say that for certain, but right next to us was like, I guess like a little raised area. There was some rocks going up maybe 7-8 feet. And I was short at the time. Like I was probably like 5'6" or something. I wasn't grown yet. And on the top of like, 7 or 8 feet up, there was like really, really dense, foliage. And I heard something moving there. So, and I don't know if this is related or not. I just remember, and we walked like a few steps, and I remember that this sound would follow us until the edge. So like it got to the edge of this rocky outcropping, and then all the brush stopped because it was like a drop off. So it couldn't, if whatever was there were to come out, it would like drop off next to us. So it didn't do that. So there was something moving next to us up there. And I thought, we thought nothing of it. I just remember hearing that. And I remember my friend looked up, Sean, and so literally probably we're talking for like, I don't know, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And I remember turning around, and there was like, I will use the language now. There was a Sasquatch there. And at the time, I literally just thought it was a monster. Like I literally thought I was looking at a monster, and it was just standing there, gray. I would say now probably 10 feet. My dad was 6'5". There's no way, Matt, there's no way this thing was less than 10 feet. And I know I was younger at the time, so I could have had like inaccurate reporting on the size. But I can tell you 100%, because I have comparisons, it was no less than 10 feet. We're not 7, not 8, not 9. It was like 3 of me. I was looking straight up. And I remember I looked at its face for about 0.5 seconds. And I looked like immediately down, like its face was so scary to me. I couldn't even last like 1 second looking at its face. I just looked completely down. And eventually I turned around. My friend was gone, dude. I didn't even hear him run. I didn't hear his feet. I didn't hear nothing. He was gone. So there must have been more time of me staring at it than I realized. Like I must have been like frozen in shock, because he was gone. So, and I didn't even hear him run. So at that point I turned back around and, I noticed, because like I'm staring probably at its waist. That's how big it was. So I looked to the left, and it's holding like half of a dog that was obviously ripped in half. You could see like dried-ish red entrails hanging out, and the blood. I couldn't tell if it was recently ripped in half or if he'd been carrying it a while. I don't know, but it seemed kind of dried-ish around the midsection where it was ripped clean. And then I looked to the right, and it had either clothes or a blanket, something from a human. Like I still don't know exactly what, but that was the scariest part.
Some sort of fabric, though.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of fabric, either clothing or like somebody's blanket. Like, and you could just look at it and recognize like this was, I don't know, from somebody's camping trip, or I don't know, somebody's clothes, something, or their blanket, and there was blood on it. So that wasn't comforting either. And at that point, I remember I looked back up at the face. Like it was this weird feeling where I had to try to look at the face, but I couldn't. And it was contorted into this grimace showing its teeth. And it was just so ugly, dude. It was so ugly. It was so, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean like, to me as a kid, it was like, it looked like a monster. Like now I'd say, okay, it looks like an ape. And it definitely had like, it was scarred up. It had scars. And I know I've listened to other people's encounters and like how they describe the face. And I know you guys since, and it took me years, but after listening to you guys, the type 1, the type 2, all that, this was, it was an ape face. So, I've heard people, oh no, it had a human face. This was not a human face, not a human face at all. It was an ape. I don't know what it was, but it was an ape face, So I mean, and before that, I'd only seen gorilla. I'd never seen like an image of Bigfoot or anything. So I'm like, okay, it kind of looks like a gorilla, but like it's like 8 times the size. And, you know, my mind is just racing. And at some point I shut down. I remember my mind just shut down. And I remember thinking like, I either have to run or that's it. And so I mustered up the courage to run, and it didn't follow me. Like I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear it pacing. I didn't hear it, you know, following me, nothing. I didn't even turn back. I just ran. And the craziest thing to me is when we were walking, we were facing straight where it was. And there was, I don't know, 5-10 seconds where we like turned and started talking. And then I see his face just like, boom, like he's staring at it. And I turn around and it's there. So like, that's why I'm mad. I'm like, where did it come from? Like, because I'm staring at, you know, and there was like trails, there was woods, whatever. It could have came up. I guess there was maybe a drop off. And I think we were elevated from, I guess if you were coming from that side, we would have been elevated as well. But it's like we should have seen it there, and it wasn't there. Then it was there. Like it was the craziest thing, dude. I'm like, where was this thing? And that was the scariest part too. And I didn't even hear him run, dude. When I saw his face, I'm like, I thought somebody was coming up with a knife behind us or something. Like, it was just so bad. And when I turned around, like not even hearing him run. So that happened. I ran back. He was literally when I got back to where everyone was still eating lunch, like he was like sitting there in like, now I could say traumatized. At the time, I just knew he was scared, but he was sitting there like holding his sandwich, not saying a word to anybody, sitting in the corner, you know, by a rock. I'm like, so, and he didn't even see it as long as me. I mean, cause I stayed there another 5-10 seconds. It's so hard to even tell how long it was after he left, you know, cause all the time just, it like stops. And I remember the camp counselor trying to talk to him, and he told me since then, he told him it was a bear, but I don't even know if that's accurate because he still won't talk about it like to this day with me. And I tried to even get him to come on shows with me. He's just not willing. But he has told me maybe one day, but he said that 5 years ago. Nothing's changed. So, you know, and I don't push him. But I am still in contact with this kid, and he doesn't mind if I use his name. His name's Sean. And so, dude, and that encounter I can't even tell you, Matt, like what it's done to my life, not in bad ways necessarily, bad ways and good ways, you know? And so, but before I guess I go on to that, I mean, I'll let you jump in if you want.
The last episode I recorded was with a guy that was hunting and had just one of the most incredible encounter stories I've ever heard. And I was talking to him about whenever I had my sighting and the encounters over the years that followed with what I think was Bigfoot. Right. I was out there with a group of people looking for this thing. That was the goal. That was the intention. And it still jacked me up mentally whenever I saw one. And it wasn't a scary thing. I mean, I had the buffer. I was looking through a night vision scope, you know, so anytime you're looking through a viewfinder at something, it separates it, you know, psychologically from reality for some reason. And it was just a few seconds, and it's, you know, it's over there in the trees, and I'm, like I said, it's surrounded by people, no big deal. But whenever you're not looking for this thing, whenever you don't even know that this thing exists, you're not even thinking about it, you're just out there, and you just run across it by chance. And then take into consideration, you're at the most impressionable age of your life.
Exactly.
And this thing by itself would be horrifying for a child that age. And then take into consideration the items that it was holding. Just the overall circumstances. I know this has had to have had a huge impact on your life. I mean, you talked about it, you know, a little bit in your emails. I can hear it in your voice now. I mean, I almost wanted, I'm sorry you went through that. I don't even know what else to say, you know?
Yeah, thank you.
The size, I know a lot of people, you know, would kind of roll their eyes at the size, you know, and try to explain it away, but I'm not going to do that because, I mean, you said it had gray hair. I'm going to assume it was older. The type of build that it had, to me indicates a male. I could be completely wrong about all these things.
I didn't even go into that, dude. Oh my God. And listen, they can scoff all they want. They were, it's like they weren't there. And I remember, Matt, when I first reported this to BFRO, and we're talking maybe 10 years ago, because I started to do research, and I'm like, it drives you, it gets you on, because you guys have had yours.
Yeah.
It's an obsession. It's an obsession. And like, there was tons of fear, and I had nightmares, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. But, I was obsessed. And so I started researching, watching stuff, reading. And I'm like, I found the BFRO. Let me report this. I typed out a freaking 2 or 3 page, thing for the report. And I'm all like excited. It was therapeutic. And like, they questioned, I remember someone contacted, are you sure it was gray? Are you sure? Like all these different things. And it was just like so invalidating. And like, and I'm, dude, I have been over this. That the image is drilled into my head. I know the size. I know the trees it was near, that weren't further away, that weren't closer to me. It was parallel, with a tree with branches. I know the size of this thing. I know my father, who's 6'5", and this thing was almost double his size. Like, and yes, of course, fear has to play into these things, but, I'm a trained observer. I'm in the mental health field, I'm a psychologist. So, I'm pretty good at these things. And at the time as a child, was I? No, of course not. But I have since, been able to go back, with therapy, with many other things, and analyze that experience in my mind. And I can bring myself back there. It was at least 10. I'm telling you, dude, it was like 4 of me almost. And so, obviously that would be a lot bigger than 10, but you get my point. It was enormous. And the chest, dude, oh my God, the chest, the shoulders, the arms, like it. And I literally am not joking you. I probably could have laid, if it was laying down, I could have laid, horizontally on its chest and shoulders. And I probably, would have taken up that's how wide it was.
Wow.
That's how wide it was, man. It had to be 5 feet across at the shoulders. Like it was so big. And that was what scared me the most. And I remember going, hearing stories and everyone's encounters where they describe, it's so big. But I didn't understand that, until I went back in my mind, thought about how big this thing was in my head. And obviously at the time as a kid, I knew, but because I was small, it was just so huge to me. But now going back and still knowing how big that thing was, I'm like, it's insanity. The bulk, the thickness of the muscles, dude, so, and I know some people see skinnier ones and some people see I understand there's different types. I can only speak on my experience, and, what I saw, it was definitely a male, whatever kind it was, whatever age, it was enormous. I mean, and the bulk is what's, struck me too. So it's God.
What color was the skin of the face and everything?
So the hair was gray, ton of gray hair, and any other skin I could see was black. So,
okay.
There was black around the face. But there was open. I know some people, there's hair. The face was kind of openish, so there wasn't as much hair around the face.
Mm-hmm.
Black. I couldn't really see its hands turned outward, but even some of the chest, I could see the black leathery skin. So everything else, any skin I could see was black.
Do you remember, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about details.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's okay if you don't remember.
If I don't, I'll say I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would fault you for that, especially an event like this one. But reflecting back, do you remember maybe could you tell what type of dog it was?
People had asked me that too. I think even Shannon asked me that. I think it was a lab. I'm pretty sure it was some kind of lab, but I don't think it was full grown. Dude, the scariest part, and I mean, maybe it was full grown and the hands were just this big, but its hand fit completely around the neck. It was like a doll or a toy. Its hand just went completely around the neck, and it could have even been the upper half of the body. It was just squeezing it, and its hand was all the way around the thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was a puppy. I really don't. I think it was a regular middle-sized lab. I could be 99% sure it was some kind of lab, either white or the golden labs. It was some kind of lab.
What about the fabric? Do you remember the color of the fabric?
I don't really remember the color, man. Yeah, I wish I did, but it all kind of meshed. I've been trying to point that detail out to myself for years, and I don't remember the color of the fabric at this point. But I remember it had blood on it. That stood out to me. Like, and that's what I focused in on. So I think it was some kind of dark color, maybe navy blue or something. But even with that, I could see there was blood on it. Like there was red.
Is this area where you guys were? You were talking about how the state or local government, keeps it protected and everything. Are people allowed to camp in that area?
So where we were, no. But if you go down, there's you probably a few miles from where we were, you could camp. So that's an interesting point that I never really thought about. But I remember, exactly where you were. You could hike through, but you couldn't stay. You couldn't camp. If you look on a map of Jersey now and you look at the Wyanoke or just, High Point State Park, where that is, Wyanoke Highlands, that's what it's called. You can see it on the map. It goes from northern New Jersey, like Sussex County, up into New York State, and then some of Pennsylvania to the west. We were somewhere in there. And there's a good amount of you're talking probably 1 million acres or something. So if you were to look on a map now from Oklahoma, you could see that, like in Jersey, that would give you an idea. And I don't exactly know where the trail was, in the Highlands, but that's where we were. Somewhere
right. In your research over the years following as you're an adult and everything, were you able to find water sources and things like that? Is this an area that could sustain a population, or would it be more likely that this was just a lone individual passing through the area at the time?
Initially, when I said it was Bear Mountain State Park, because that's where I thought we were, and I had got the areas confused, I don't think it could have supported, and I think it would have been passing through. But now, doing the research, going back and actually calling them, finding out, where the trails were and where they went, like the outdoor lab, I did this about 3 years ago. I wasn't at Bear Mountain State Park. We were in the Highlands area. So, dude, I think there's definitely a population there because it connects to New York, goes into Pennsylvania. I've talked to others who have had encounters there. They used to call it Old Red Eye. That was the legend, the Native American legend in northern New Jersey there. So I 100% think there's a population. How big of a population? I don't know. Obviously nothing like Oklahoma or somewhere where you are. I don't know. The Adirondacks, I think, can support a good population. So I think you're talking about at least a few family groups in that area. Like me saying that now, I couldn't even do it. I used to have I couldn't even read about this stuff. I remember and now, Matt, I'm telling you, and I'm thanking you, because the more shows like this I do, the more therapeutic it is for me. And the more I just feel like I'm not insane, and it right. It really helps. It helps connect me with you guys and just ground me into reality. No, these things are real. This, this is okay. It's number one, it's okay to feel scared still, and all these different things. So this really helps me. So I've been able to do that research because of, the shows like you guys have.
Well, absolutely. And it helps me, this is the same thing, I get from the different guests that I have on, and every time somebody starts talking about their encounter, I start remembering my own, and it helps a little more and more each time.
Right.
Whenever you guys snuck off to smoke a cigarette, I know you wanted to move far enough where you wouldn't get caught, obviously.
Yeah.
You said you were walking for a couple minutes. Were you able to still hear or see the group of people you were with?
No way. And I've since realized, this 2 minutes in my head didn't sound long, but we were walking for 2 minutes straight. It was a decent amount of time.
Yeah, you can cover some distance in 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And we might have been jogging, but no, couldn't hear anybody. Which was kind of spooky too. Yeah. It was just spooky, man. Even before it walked up, and before you ask, I have a question for you quick. Do you think, and I know you can't answer this, but do you think what I heard to my right, when I first mentioned there was something kind of pacing us for a tiny bit, do you think that was another one?
Yeah, I do. That's why I asked the question. If you thought it was a lone individual, you were talking about how it just kind of appeared out of nowhere.
Right.
And I think that might have had something to do with it was already there.
It had to be, yeah.
And maybe had laid down and realized you guys weren't a threat and stood up.
Jesus.
I think what you were hearing was another one. And that's why it was so disorientating whenever that thing did show itself, because according to what you had heard and trying to put the two together, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Oh my God. And and then you say the no threat thing, and like I get it, but and that's what I was going to ask you too. It's like, what do you think? Do you think it like was hunting somebody and like killed them and ate them and ate the dog? Like,
no, I mean, I don't know. I think they do these kinds of things to dogs, man. I don't know why.
Right. Right. They hate them.
Yeah, I mean, people have different theories about it. A lot of people think one of the things that I kind of agree with is if a dog is alerting to their presence and won't shut up, they got to take care of it, Right. Would they use them as a food source? Sure, why not?
Right.
It's interesting that this particular one was carrying it around, though.
Exactly. Maybe it did just kill. I don't know. Maybe it was fresh. I mean, who knows? Like,
right. I mean, you don't really know. I mean, how long does it take the blood to dry and things like that?
Right.
And it's carrying the fabric and everything. It could have very easily raided a campsite. It could have snatched it out of somebody's backyard. Maybe that was a dog blanket or a blanket being used for a dog.
Right.
I mean, we don't really know. I don't like to think that these are just bloodthirsty man killers, though.
No, me neither.
I think they will if you run across the wrong one at the wrong time.
Right.
But Bigfooters don't disappear.
Exactly.
I know, everybody preaches the missing 411 stuff. I get it. But there's a lot of things in the wild that can happen to you. But Bigfooters are out there in their territories while they're active and provoking them. So
exactly. And they don't kill them. So.
Yeah, no Bigfooters has ever disappeared while looking for Bigfoot. So that,
very true.
To me, that kind of stands out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely.
I think there was a bigger chance that this thing saw it was just a couple of kids. You're not a threat. Right. But it was angry because you were in its way. I see this a lot in reports, and it's not something that is 100% accurate. But if you go back and look at reports of things happening whenever these things get kind of aggressive and start throwing stuff and things like that, acting up, it's usually in a situation where a person has entered an area and then stopped. And here you have a situation where you guys entered an area and then stopped to smoke a cigarette. You didn't move on, so it got tired of waiting.
Right.
And just said, hey, I'm going to run you guys off because you're just a couple kids.
Right.
But that's just, pure speculation. Could be completely wrong. But if it had wanted you...
Oh, yeah, we
wouldn't be having this conversation. Be on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Chris never would have came out of the woods.
So did you, before we move on down the road, because I know you've got other stuff to talk about, but I mean, as a kid, did you go home and tell your family, your friends? Did you tell anybody about this?
No. It's so weird, bro. Like, so recently it's like, I kept it. So to answer your question directly, no, I didn't. I talked about it with him. Are we going to talk about this? No, we ain't. Okay. That's it. I didn't even talk to him on like the bus ride home, really. I just, and I remember probably for years I kept it secret. I remember I brought it up to my dad like once, and I kind of, because he saw me watching like Sasquatch stuff as I got older, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you watching?" And that whole thing. So I remember then I let it out like once. Well, what if I did see one? And he's like, "Chris, what are you talking about?" And I was like, yeah, okay, that's going back down.
Yeah.
So, and that's the response until I found people that actually understood. I kept it in. Yeah. And to this day, dude, I don't really tell anybody except people like you and other people I meet that are, and I hate to say it, but that are not ignorant of the topic and actually know these things exist. Cause I ain't explaining it to anyone because you're not going to open their mind, as you know. So,
I mean, that's not something you can just jump into with somebody that's not into it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you got a lot of layers on that onion to peel back before you can ever get to the point where like, and I saw one, like, yeah, first off, I'm not crazy.
Exactly.
It's never a good start in a conversation whenever you have to lead off with that.
Because, dude, it's like if somebody needs to admit that you saw one, then that would mean, okay, reasoning, deduction, scientific method. Okay, that means, well, there ain't just one running around the country that Chris saw and that this person in freaking Washington saw. So that means there's a population of these things. That means they're here. They're everywhere. Where are they? And so people can't, they just can't open their mind to that. It's too much for them. So,
right.
And I get that and I understand that. But Matt, like, that's why, like, for years I literally was having such nightmares. I was like, I need somebody to talk to about this. Like, I need, and not like a therapist who's like, okay, I need somebody who knows what I'm saying is real, who knows what I'm saying is true, who knows they exist. Like, that's who I need to talk to, and I finally found that, and it made my life so much different. Like I was able to heal. I was able to move through this thing and then actually get into it as an interest and, turn it into a positive. And do I still have those nightmares and stuff? Yeah, I do. Like, dude, to this day, like, I'll be, I'll be in a dream and like, I don't see it, but I know it's a Bigfoot and like, I know it's coming for me. And like, I literally will go to a corner and be so scared. And like, I feel it coming towards me. And then I get this really, really weird feeling and I just wake up and it's like, I still have that same dream, like every few months to this day, so that's probably because my brain was still developing and I was young and I went through this traumatic event and it's still there somewhat and that's okay, but I can deal with it.
Now you're a therapist, a psychologist. What exactly is it?
Yes. Yeah. So an LCSW. So it's similar to a psychologist, clinical social worker, psychotherapist.
Would you be afraid that this would somehow hurt you if it came out or anything?
Not at all. I don't care, dude. It's like, listen, this is not only is this part of who I am, part of my story, but it's such, one of the things in this world, in this life that disturbs me the most is that we have this amazing species running around this country and people don't know it. And it's in the realm of like ghosts and supernatural and, crazies. And like, it disturbs me so much that, I don't care. Like I stand for this thing. I stand with it. I'm open about it. If anybody wants to debate me, they can debate me, but I have absolutely no fears of it affecting my career. So I could care less.
So you had your encounter, obviously very traumatizing. At what point did you really start to pursue this thing and decide to actually, commit to learning about it and going out and looking for it and stuff?
Yeah. So, I had so many problems after this, man. Like I was in trouble a lot. I had all these issues. And I think this really was at the core of a lot of it. And, I was just acting out because I didn't know what to do with this. And then finally, I would say like 18, 19, I saw a couple documentaries, couple shows, and I saw people that were interviewing on there, describing their encounters and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like this thing is like, this is a real thing. Like people, and I remember, and I could always tell Matt who is BSing and who is serious about like their encounter and who's telling the truth. And it's like, you could just tell by the way they're describing it, who's making up a story, unless they're a really good, psychopath. Obviously, if they're good liars, they're good liars, but that's very far and few in between. So I remember watching these interviews and I'm like, this person's telling the truth. Like they saw one and like, okay, how do I research it? How do I get in contact with somebody? And so I eventually found the BFRO, I guess, just poking around online. And that was the first time I tried to contact anybody and actually do real research. And like, so I read all the encounters. I would click on every state and read all the encounters and go through the details. And I'm like, I want to learn about these things, like everything about them. And then that went the way it went when they called me and started questioning everything. And I was like, oh God. And so that left a sour taste in my mouth with those guys. But, I started listening to them and their buffoonery versus guys like you and like other shows. And I'm like, oh my God, like the depth of knowledge that you guys have and like the difference in the level of knowledge. And so like I started to pursue more, shows like yours and like listen to guys like yours. And, so now we're talking 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I would go through like these extreme back and forth between periods of obsession and periods of like intense fear, because I would first get into it and like I guess I hadn't worked through the fear, I guess. And I would get into it too much and I would get super scared at nighttime. Like if I watched or if I read too much about it, like night would come and I'd just be terrified. Like I would turn the corner of my house and I'd see one, like not literally, but like in my head. And so I couldn't be alone. It was like, oh my God. So then if by that time I would have to stop and get into something else, and I'd have to come back to it like a few months later. But so around there is like early 20s is probably when I got really deep into it.
So this wasn't the only encounter you had.
Right. Yeah. So I wasn't going to bring that up today. I didn't know if you were going to, but
I mean, I don't know anything about it. You mentioned it, in passing, and you said that was a story for a different time. I mean, what, lightning struck twice?
That's literally what I thought. And that's like literally what I said. I remember when I did the first, I don't know if it was Sasquatch Chronicles or on Into the Fray radio, but that's literally what I said. Cause I was like, there's no way. But like, I just did not expect it to happen again. I really didn't. And I felt like there was some kind of energy. Dude, I literally thought something doesn't want me in the woods. So like after that, I haven't been back since then, Matt, because like I really haven't. I can't, number one, I can't find anybody to go with, and I'm not going alone. I am terrified in the woods at night to this day. I can't do it. So I don't have a group. I don't have people that are into it around me in my area. I haven't found them. So, that second encounter really just, didn't turn me off. It actually got me more into it, but it just solidified my terror. Like I just can't do it right now, at least. Man. So in some ways this was like, it can't be scarier, honestly, because I was a kid, but it was almost just as scary. And it's like, and just to preface everybody and you, Matt, the funniest thing about this is I'll admit it, I have no ego. I know nothing about camping. I know still very little about the outdoors. I know nothing about navigation. I know nothing about surviving in the woods. Like, it was the stupidest idea for me to do. I mean, literally, dude, the stupidest. And I don't know what I was thinking. I really don't. And I still to this day don't. Like, I'm not equipped to even camp. I mean, so
I'm not going to trash you, dude. Okay. I'm going to let the world know a little dirty secret of mine. Okay. I am a fan and have watched every episode of Jersey Shore.
There we go. All right. There we go.
All right. You look like you could be on Jersey Shore.
Exactly. Right. It's funny, dude. And so I remember people walk by me and what's this guy doing? I mean, but I want to learn. I really do. And I'm still, 29. So I have time. I have time to learn. It's something I'm definitely going to do. So I remember I was able to get in contact with this guy on a forum, an older man who had his encounter. I think he had an encounter, but he didn't really talk about it, but he knew the legends of like up that area. And I could point out exactly where I was at on a map. And I was in Wantage in Sussex County at the top, like almost in New York. And so I was able to go out there with one kid who I finally convinced to come with me. I think he believed that they existed, and he did his own research. His name is Brian. And I'm still in contact with this kid too. He's like the only kid I could find who's open to this over 20 years. And so I remember talking to this guy, and he directed me to an area I remember there was an abandoned cottage there. He had frequented that area. And already at this time, I'm like, God, what are the chances I could get in contact with this guy? And it was kind of just an amazing thing. It really felt surreal to me. But still, at this point, there's no way I'm gonna have an encounter. Like I didn't believe it whatsoever. Like I wanted to go out there and search, maybe I know you're gonna make fun of me, do some wood knocks, whatever. And that's really what I was gonna do. And I really didn't know what was gonna happen. I didn't think anything would happen. So stupid. I didn't bring a sleeping. I brought a sleeping bag, Matt. Listen to this. No tent, barely, no supplies. We had 2 machetes that we hacked our way through, like the back of that abandoned cottage. We literally hacked our way through a path and kept going. Probably, I don't know, I can't say for how long, but our arms were tired. We were hacking our way through because there was no paths here. Like there was no trails whatsoever. And we had 2 sleeping bags with nothing else.
So you're just going all in out the gate.
Literally all in. And but see, like this is the city slicker Jersey type stuff. We don't know what we're doing out there. So it's like, but I learned my lesson. So we're going out, and it would have been fine if I didn't have an encounter because I wasn't going to stay for more than a night. I would have walked my way straight back out the way I came in, and I could kind of tell. I say that now, who knows? I could have got lost. But so we get there. So we get to a spot where there's lakes. I know there was a water source. I can't exactly remember now if there was a lake on the right or left, but there was a lake there. There was a water source. There was 2 ridges, one on the left, one on the right. Before we get to that point, I'll say, and this is the craziest part, dude. I saw tracks. So we went back there a second time. The first time I went there, I saw tracks. Which was insane. And I was insane. I was out of my mind. I was like, oh my God, there's tracks, dude.
Yeah. Tracks blow my mind.
Oh my God, it was amazing. 3 sets, and there was a baby, whatever. There was a young set, and there was, I guess, a male, and then there was like a middle, which I assume was the female. The female was still huge, like, and I remember they were off to the side. The kid was all the way to the right by the trees, and the male was all the way to the left, like not all the way to the left, but it was kind of like he was walking maybe midway, and then the female was next to him, and the kid was by the wood line, which I guess would make sense. I happened to see, okay, I don't know if this is related. I don't want to make jumps and connections. I ended up seeing a dead bear on that trail. I don't know if it was connected. I will tell you the neck looked like it was twisted all the way around. But since then, I've done more research, and like, I don't want to make connections where there's not connections, you know? So yeah. I don't know. Maybe they killed the bear. Maybe they didn't. But I did see a dead bear in that same area. But
that's one of the things that people bring up all the time is like, well, how often do you see a dead bear? Nobody ever sees a dead bear. So even that's like a really cool thing.
Exactly.
Sort of.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, holy shit, a bear corpse? Like, I never even see a dead deer. The only time I see a dead deer, dude, is on the highways in Jersey when people hit them with a car. So yeah, it was very cool. But it didn't look like it died peacefully. But so, you know, there was that. We went back out. I guess it got dark. We didn't feel comfortable staying there. He wanted to go out. I wasn't going to stay by myself. I at least had that much sense. So we ended up going, we left, we went back out, and we came back the next day. So we stayed, this time we left when it was still light out. We ended up going further, you know, so you can't get to this area. If we didn't hack our way through the initial brush, we would never have been able to get to this area where I saw the tracks. Well, I shouldn't graze over that, dude. But we stared at the tracks. It was amazing. Like, I didn't look at dermal ridges and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing back then, really. But I was in shock. I mean, I was in shock just seeing the tracks. I don't even know how to describe it to you, because I'm like, there's no way this is happening. You know what I mean? That's really what it felt like.
I mean, you hacked your way in with machetes.
Yes.
You know, and then you find these tracks of like apparently different sizes. I mean, were they like 5-toed tracks? Were they very distinct? Or were they just kind of like impressions that were the shape of a foot?
They for all the tracks I've seen picture wise to this day that have been proven to be legitimate tracks, that's what they looked like. I mean, there was, you know, they were impressions deep, something heavy, but I could see toes too. And like, that's why I was trying to convince myself out of it. I'm like, but there's toes. There's no way. Like, it was not a person. It was not a boot. I know what overlaid bear tracks look like now. It wasn't them. Because I know there was a bear there. I was like, oh, what if they, all right, I guess I can't say for sure, but in my opinion, they were not bear tracks. And also because I ended up encountering 2 of them the next night, I would assume they weren't bear tracks.
I would say it's a safe assumption.
So did I have fear at that point? Yeah. I mean, I was getting a little nervous, but it's interesting, Matt, because like it's weird. Like when I saw these tracks, like the fear wasn't really there that much. It was more excitement. And I was like, oh my God, like I was more excited. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't scared yet. It was just weird. Like the fear like went away. So we went back the next day, and let me tell you this, as soon as the sun went down, I started to get really jumpy, and like the fear started to set in. So I think it's weird because my first encounter happened in broad daylight. So I don't know what that's about, but as soon as the sun went down, I was like, I want to leave. He convinced me to stay, dude. I was going to get out of there. There's no way. And then I had to convince him to stay later. But at first, I was terrified and I wanted to leave. He's like, bro, we just hacked our way in with machetes. We just wasted. Come on, we're not wasting. Let's just stay the night. Like we're not going to waste our time here. Look, we came all the way up here. I'm like, all right. If he wasn't there, I would have been gone. There's no way I could do it on my own. So we eventually got to that area, like I said, where there was a lake. So there was a ridge on the left and right. And I remember, I don't know how long I waited before I did a wood knock. And I remember, Matt, I'm telling you, the first wood knock I did, and there was a time where after this, there was like there was some time in between. I heard something again, but I literally, and I would say maybe 3 seconds, I knocked on the tree with a branch, and maybe 3 seconds later I heard a scream. Like it had to be, it was like almost instant. And at that point I'm literally like, so I'm still very religious and spiritual. At the time I was religious. Matt, I was cursing God. I was like, if you make one of these things here again, I'm going to hate you. Like I'm never going to, and I know that sounds weird, but like, that's how scared I was when I heard it. And my friend Brian's like, bro, what the F are you talking about? You wanted to come here. Like, why are you all scared now? So it was a funny interaction, but like, as soon as I heard the thing scream, I was just, I wanted to leave again. And I didn't. That's all I heard. I heard one scream. And then time went by. I don't know how much time went by. Dude, I had no concept of time. We had like no watches on us. My cell phone wasn't working out there. I had no concept of time, which another dumb decision, I know. So I had no idea at this point what time it was or how long I was going to be out in the dark. Like we were just out there. So we sit down, we throw our sleeping bags on the ground, and like literally like now it's set in when we're looking at each other, we're like, what are we going to do now, dude? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And so I was getting more scared by the minute, and so I'm like, okay, well, we're here. Let me try to do the things I've researched about. And okay, I'm not going to do a yell because I don't know how to do one at this point, but I'll knock. So I kept knocking for a little. At some point, I guess there was intermittent times I would knock and stop. I heard again a similar scream, but Matt, I'm telling you, dude, it was so loud. Like I can't even describe to you how loud this thing was. Like my whole body shook, my ears hurt. I mean, so where it sounded like it came from. Well, I know where it came from. There was like a small ridge up to the left and the small ridge up to the right. This one came from the left. So it was obviously up there. And at the time, I'm trying not to think that it's a Sasquatch. Like I'm trying to just think I don't know what I'm trying to think, but I didn't want to think that.
Some other thing is out there screaming in the middle of the night after you slap a tree with a stick. Right.
But at the time also, like I hadn't heard the one vocalized that I saw all those years ago. So, I mean, I had a concept. What I can describe is it's most like, I know like now on the BFRO site, the Puyallup or whatever screamers, like, oh, it's a coyote. I don't know, dude. One of those, either the Snohomish scream or that one. It ain't a coyote. There's no way. So, and I know how coyotes sound. I've heard them here by my house. Like I know they can sound really eerie. I know exactly how they sound when they're screaming. I'm not that dull. This wasn't a coyote, and I knew it wasn't because it was soon to come running down straight at me a few minutes later. But it didn't sound anything like that. It sounded like an ape screaming, man. And I remember, Para Breakdown on YouTube.
I do. A good friend of mine, Phil Poling.
Yes. Yeah. I forgot his name. So, okay. Immediately after that scream, I hear like way more of like a roar sound to the right. The only thing I've been able to find that imitates that sound is the Clipper Mills screams from California. I don't know if you saw that video on YouTube. If you look up Clipper Mills screams California, like, dude, there's like 15 or 20 minutes of these roars going on, and it sounds like there's like a family group moving. It's crazy. So, but Para Breakdown did a breakdown of that video, and he compares it to like a mountain gorilla. They're very similar. So at that point, I hear both of those things, and I know since I've heard people talk about the ultrasound thing, but putting that to the side because I wasn't thinking about it at this time, I literally felt frozen. Like whether it was or not, I don't know, but I literally couldn't move. Like I couldn't move, especially after the roar, because there was a scream to the left and then a roar to the right. And that's the way I can differentiate them. They sounded different. They were both just as loud. They were just different. They were just scary and different. It sounded like it was two different. It had to be genders. I mean, that's what I would think.
Well, let's just speculate for a second that you're completely wrong and that the one on the left was a coyote. That still doesn't explain the one on the right. It doesn't explain the roar. Coyotes don't roar. They, yip.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it sounded like. It was like either a lion or a tiger or a dinosaur. I mean, that's literally what it sounded like. So after roars, I literally hear the one on the left come barreling down, full force, full speed, barreling down the hill, breaking things. It obviously just mowing down trees. I mean, obviously not giant oak trees. They were, medium sized, but it had to be just running stuff over, like just barreling stuff down. That's exactly what it sounded like. And it stops right at the edge of the brush, like literally. Like, I don't know how it would stop that quick. You think something with that momentum and that speed, that weight, the body weight behind it would like at least go out a little, and then, you know what I mean? Like skid to a stop. Yeah. This thing stopped on a dime, like just stopped. And then the one on the right did the same thing. Oh my God, dude, I thought it was going to come through the woods and just kill. Like, I thought it was just going to come right out and rip me in half. Like, that's what I thought. And I'm like, I'm dead. Like, I'm dead, and he's going to die behind me, and it's going to eat us. Like, that's what I thought. But it didn't. They stopped. They both just stopped. And I'm like, I don't wish. But in that moment, I'm like, please just kill me and get it over with. Like, it was worse. Like, I'm like, just do it. But obviously, I guess they didn't want to do that. But at the time, I didn't know. I could just see the silhouette, and I didn't look to the right. I couldn't see, but I was close enough on the left to see whichever one was on the left. And I just saw, again, a massive silhouette of shoulders. Everything was dark black. It was just silhouetted. Just silhouetted. There was probably crescent moon. I mean, it was just enough to see a silhouette. But it was still almost pitch black, man. I mean, it was the stupidest idea.
You guys didn't have a fire or anything like that going?
Nothing. We had 2 flashlights.
So you were armed to the teeth.
Exactly. Yeah. We still had our machetes. But yeah, like, right. Like, I'd be able to, it would be like a toothpick against that thing. But not that I'd ever swing it, because I would just piss it off more. But I didn't point the flashlight. I was like, no way, do not turn that thing on. I didn't want to see it, and I was scared it was going to piss it off. Like, I was like, nope. I didn't even grab it. They were on the ground. I didn't even move. I was just frozen. And Matt, I can't tell you how long I stood there, but I have no idea, like, because time stopped again. And eventually they just left. They just walked away, and I could hear them walking away back up the hill. And that's literally it. It did piss me off, honestly, because I'm like, why show your, like, we didn't leave. We sat there for probably 2-3 hours, like, just like sucking our thumbs like babies before we were able to, like, muster up and get out of there. We had to wait for some kind of daylight. So I don't even know how long we were sitting there, but, like, why? I guess maybe they were trying to scare us off and we didn't. And then they just said, well, screw it. We're not going to kill him. But I mean, like we've talked about, I know that's not their intention, but it's like, why do that if you're not going to, and I know this is just strange stuff to think about, but that's what's going through my mind when I'm sitting there. I'm like trying to analyze its behavior. Like, why did you do that to me? Why did you? And it's just crazy that the effect these things can have on you. But I didn't do it right. And I'm beating myself. I'm like, you didn't do it smart. You didn't do it safely. You didn't, like, and so I'm not trying to beat myself up. I'm just saying, like, there's a reason. We probably dropped into their living room again, and they were like, get out, and we didn't. So it probably was the same type of thing as the first time. I can't believe that I had that chance again. I really can't. It felt like there was some kind of energy that wanted me to have that second encounter, because what are the chances it would happen? There's people that go Bigfooting for 20 years and they don't get to see one. Right.
You were in a situation, I've heard this similar type of activity happening before. Again, speculation. You were obviously in territory. You found tracks. You were in that area. You had to hack your way in with machetes. This isn't like some hiking trail or campgrounds or anything that you're at.
Right.
You didn't have a fire. There's just 2 of you. I'm willing to bet that, like, the 2 of you weren't making a whole lot of noise while you were out there once you got settled in and everything.
Nope.
You're not turning on your flashlights. And then you did a tree knock. You have these 2 individuals separated by some distance, and now there's a 3rd one knocking that's not supposed to be there. Humans aren't supposed to knock on trees in the middle of the night where they're not supposed to be at. So is that another Bigfoot has entered the territory? What's going on? One vocals off, the other one answers. Hey, is that you? Nope, not me. Okay. They come hauling ass towards the other Bigfoot that's in their territory, and whenever they get there, and realize it's humans. They throw on the brakes and probably observed you for a few minutes and then backed off a little bit and got some safe distance between them. That would be my guess.
Oh man, Matt, I got to ask you this because I need your knowledge. What do you think they think, like when they're looking at a human? Like, what were they thinking when they saw us? Like, did they think, hey, if we, I know that it's not their intention, but if we attack these two kids, more people will come. It won't be good for us, or like?
I think so. I do. I think, everybody always talks about firearms, that they know what firearms are, with the basis of they've watched hunters and people for years use guns and what they can do, and that's why they don't like them. A lot of people believe, not very often are you going to have the chance to even have an encounter if you have a firearm, because they can smell it or whatever, or, they'll stay away from it. I would think that if you have that train of thought, if that's the path you're going with, then it's not a far stretch to say they've also observed what happens whenever a human disappears or something bad happens to a human. A whole lot of humans come. Dogs come. Everything happens, Their area is ruined. I think their main thing is to stay hidden from us for whatever reason. I don't know the reason. It probably has something to do with them being around a lot longer than us and observing a lot of really horrible things.
Yeah, agreed. That's amazing, man. God.
But at the end of the day, none of us know anything. So,
exactly.
I mean, I appreciate you respecting my opinion, but it's no more than your opinion or anybody else's.
But yeah, I guess. But you have field research, and you have knowledge you've gained from encounters and experiences over time. So that's what I value. And yeah, of course you can't say for sure on things, but you have experience that you've built up, and you can make inferences and know a lot of just stuff you guys talk about. It's just obvious that you're taking things you've experienced. And yeah, of course, at the end of the day, maybe they're speculations, but it's a hell of a lot closer to reality than we have otherwise. So,
I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts on it? You were the one that lived it. You're the guest. You tell me. What do you think was going on in their minds?
I think part of it is what we just talked about, where I think they wouldn't have an intention to unless they're starving. So I think if they were starving and they needed food and they were hungry enough, I think they would. And I probably think it's happened. I don't know. Obviously we can't speculate on how much, but I think it's probably happened before. Or like you said, they've crossed the wrong one. I think there's bad ones, just like there's bad people, like you've also said on shows, but I don't think it's the same, but it's maybe similar. Just like there's animals that are prone to attacking more than other animals. But I think they know overall their spot will get ruined. And I think more humans will come, dogs will come, and all this different stuff will come. And I think they weigh their options, say it's not worth it. It's more trouble than it's worth. Now, I also think with the missing 411 thing, I think there you have a conglomerate of different things going on. I think maybe some of them are, Sasquatch killings. I think some maybe are dogmen killings. I think some are psychopaths, people in the woods killing people. I think maybe there's other stuff going on. And I think all that stuff together, shows, there's a lot of people that go missing. And so people want to put one label or another on it. But I think there's a ton of stuff going on there. So I guess with me, it always goes back to, because that's my primal fear, because that was my first traumatic experience. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, this thing just killed the person and it ate him, and now it killed their dog and it's going to eat. Like, that's the first experience I had with one. And so yeah. I think it was tainted towards the violence aspect. And now I've come over years to learn, like you said, there's probably some things going on there. And I know for, like we've talked about, they hate dogs. So that's played into it. I think in that moment, like you said, I think I walked into their living room again, and they were like, what the hell's going on? This is not one of us. These are two people. Did they knock? Why are they knocking? And then I guess they left. But it's, I guess my thing was, if you, another thing you said once on the show, and I know I'm kind of going off here, but it's like you said, even the government's not that good. Listen, the government's good, but they ain't that good. So at some point, one of these things would have turned up and they wouldn't be able to cover it up, because they can't be everywhere at once, right? So In my mind, I'm like, is there a mass cover up going on? It's like, they can't possibly do that. There's no way. There's no way there's enough of them. So what it has to be is these things are, like you said, so they want to stay away from us so much that they make it their priority, and they're good enough at it, and they don't need our help at doing it. But the intelligence of that's what gets me. It's like, I guess, and of course the pure strength, Matt, I'm telling you, dude, it sounded like a train coming down that hill, and it just stopped on a dime. Like it just stopped. Like it just had the calf muscles to stop. Like, and it was like right at the edge of the brush. And I'm like, how do they do this stuff? It's unbelievable.
I would say their intelligence is the thing that scared me the most.
Yeah.
And just to put things into perspective for you, there was never a time, regardless of who I was with, where if we were experiencing activity and that activity without a sighting
right.
got to a certain level, we hauled ass.
Right.
Our number one rule was you back your vehicle into the spot so you can just get in and leave. Leave the cars in the ignition, the windows down so the vehicle can't accidentally get locked, and it's pointed out the entire time. And if somebody yelled load up, that's exactly what we did with no questions. Grab your stuff and live to fight another day.
Right.
There was a time where I was back at the spot where I had my original sighting. I was with my research partner and another person, and there was some stuff going on. No sighting took place. Distinctly heard the sound of a tree being pushed over. Didn't see the tree fall. Didn't see any brush move, but could clearly hear the tree, the roots popping, the soil flying through and hitting other trees, the crash. And whenever that happened, I said, let's go. I ran. I didn't want to stay there anymore.
Right.
About 30 minutes later, I went back because I knew that I just needed to conquer that fear because this was my research area. Like, I couldn't get scared of my own research area. So nobody should ever feel bad about fear. I mean, I've lived my life with an anxiety disorder. So fear has been a part of my day-to-day life, you know?
Yeah, so you know about that.
Yeah. And I know, just from you telling your stories, you were having panic attacks and anxiety during certain events.
100%.
The fight or flight, you know? Kill me now. Get it over with. It's the idea of you killing me now is better than me having to deal with this fear that I'm feeling right now.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
But people also swim with sharks, man. So
Right.
I know that the human brain has the ability to control that fear.
It does. Do you think in some of these encounters that we hear, and like even yours, right? Like, and some of them, I guess they do eventually leave, but the ones where you hear, like I guess you do end up in their living space and they get really, really aggressive and they want you gone. And usually 99% of the time at that point, people leave, like whether it's like a researcher or not, or just civilians. Do you think if somebody stayed past those times and just wouldn't go, the more they ramped up their aggression? Now, I know this wouldn't happen every time, but do you think there would be times if they just wouldn't leave, no matter how bad the rock throwing and tree crashing got? Do you think they would resort to doing something? Or
if their numbers outnumber the other numbers?
Got it. Which is so funny because they don't need that. One of them could kill 8 of us in a second.
Absolutely. And elephants and every animal out there that could kill a human very easily, but they're still afraid of us for some reason. Let's take a look at, if you don't mind, because I'm intrigued by your background, what kind of cases do you work with in psychology? You said mental health.
Yeah, so a lot of actually, I do work with a lot of trauma. One of my office mates does EMDR, certified in trauma. I do a lot of DBT. That's kind of my specialty, CBT and DBT. So I work with like anxiety disorders, panic attacks, like we said. I actually do work with a lot of borderline personality cases, and that's kind of something different. But I've been able to do really good work with them, and a lot of the research shows that if you have a personality disorder, it's very, very hard to treat it or for you to change. So I don't work with like narcissism, stuff like that, but I work with a lot of borderline cases, and I'm able to make good headway there, changing the way they think and respond to external stimuli and the world, and you know, how they act in relationships and kind of reprogramming that, helping self-esteem, and then a lot of, you know, major depressive disorder, a lot of generalized anxiety, like we've talked about. So it really, I work with a whole bunch of different populations.
So let's say you bump into somebody that finds out your background and you've never had a Bigfoot sighting, but this person comes to you with your story. How would you go about telling them to deal with it? How would they handle that? What would your advice be?
So we would go through a lot of exercises on acceptance. Number one, accepting that this happened to you. And there's like different tools I can use for that. A lot of it would be talk therapy and me having them go through the experience. And then doing some other stuff to kind of reinforce that tool of accepting and using radical acceptance. I would use positive self-affirmations when they would think about if there was any shame and guilt involved with it. And I would kind of give them homework assignments and tools to work on that, work through that. And then I would eventually get to a point of exposure, probably like exposure therapy, which is kind of what I did for myself. And that's what healed me. But I would have them, if they really, really, really wanted to, you know, move through this thing, and if other things weren't working, I would have them, you know, go out into the woods, and I would have them subject themselves to something that was giving them fear in small doses, you know, to retrain the brain and, you know, kind of try to heal that trauma by subjecting and saying, hey, this happened to you. It's scary, yes, and it affected your life significantly, but you can be okay and you can deal with this, you know. And this is something that other people experience too. I would probably direct them to forums and support groups and videos and whatnot. I mean, so Bigfoot support groups, but you know what I mean. I direct them to some kind of outside peer network that could help them. Maybe a show like this, whatever the case may be. And that's really where I would start. And then I would see where they were at after that. But I think exposure would really be the thing I would work with, because there ain't no research on this, but there's research on other stuff that different fear experiences, of course, and different kinds of trauma. So, but I think incorporating that with my own personal experience, I would say exposure is the way to go, because as scary as it was to get back out into the woods and stuff, man, and like watch this stuff and going, that's what healed me the most. Like, and that's really the only thing that I think like put the cap in the bottle for that fear. Like, do I still have the fear response? Yeah, absolutely. But it's nowhere like it was. And do I still have trauma and flashbacks and whatnot? Like, I'm sure it's still there, but it doesn't have power over me like it used to. So, yeah, there's still fear there, but I can go into the woods now at night and be there. Am I going to be scared? Yeah, I couldn't even do it before. I would have a panic attack. I would be paralyzed. So, yeah, I think that's what I do. And this would be a new area for me, obviously. Like, I kind of wish someone would come to me with that, but, so it would be difficult. I'd have to use the research on what other traumatic experiences can be kind of similarly linked up to this kind of encounter. And I would kind of go with that, you know?
Yeah. That was, a big obstacle for me growing up. I spent a lot of time in the woods as a kid by myself. It was a favorite pastime of mine. I had a little black duffel bag that I would load up with, like, I had different times, man, different times. Okay. So like I had like, whenever I was a kid, something that was really popular was what we called a survival knife. It was basically like a Rambo knife, but you could it had a compass in the handle and you could unscrew the compass. It was like a cap that would come off, and there's like, matches and like a little wire saw and like some fishing utensils and stuff shoved down in the handle. And you could like put the knife on the end of a stick and make a spear out of it. Nothing a kid should have, but I had one, of course. And I had a machete. I would have my machete with me. I'd have my BB gun with me. Usually some rope. I don't know why. I just thought I always needed rope. And I would go out in the woods and just spend the whole day out in the woods by myself, just exploring and, hiking around and building booby traps that I was going to catch people in for some reason. I guess I was sadistic or something. I don't know. But then older, life-changing experience, Bigfoot's real. I look back on those times, and that was the big difference for me, is going out into the woods, knowing what's out there.
Right.
As opposed to whenever I was younger, thinking I knew what was out there, but not actually knowing. Did you have trouble with that aspect of it? Because it seems like whenever you know these things are out there, it's like you're trying to deal with it, but it's also a huge burden because you're carrying this knowledge around and you just want to scream at the top of your lungs to the world that, you know, these things are real and they're out there.
You mean like, do I have trouble with that exact point of like knowing that they exist and having to like kind of go through the world?
Yeah.
Dude, that is what's left over. Like, you know, with everything else that's kind of culminated and happened from all these experiences, that is the thing that is always on my mind, that racks my brain. Sometimes it tortures me, man. I feel like it's a blessing and a curse, like we've said. Like we have this knowledge and I'm going around like, I just want to scream at people. Like, do you understand? You know, and maybe, listen, there's some people that probably wouldn't care anyway, but the people that at least are avid outdoorsmen or enjoy nature, science, you know, enjoy animals. I'm like, do you understand what's right under your nose if you wanted to like pursue it? Like, or just even people in general, do you understand what you're watching and laughing at on TV? Like that's a cartoon or a joke actually exists. Like I do, and it actually went into anger. There's times I've really wanted to like, you know, do things I shouldn't have to people, you know.
Isn't that kind of crazy though, how they've used it as like a pop culture icon?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
You know, it's just like something, you know, to put on an insurance commercial or something, you know, to sell beef jerky with, like.
Right. And I'm like, the ignorance, man. It's like, do you understand like what's going on out? Like, oh my God, it really does. It's like, but what do you do about it? It kills me. It kills me inside sometimes, but it's one of those things that we literally can do nothing about because we can't change people's minds.
I mean, you see what's going on with the alien stuff, the UFOs and stuff, and people getting, at least, I mean, I haven't seen anybody talk about the validation involved in that, but I'm sure a lot of people are feeling it. Do you think it'll get to the point with Bigfoot?
I think so. It's so interesting for that, just real quick, right? Because like, you know, I'm sitting here watching these guys on Congress and like, you know, even on the news networks at first, they're kind of finding it, well, you know, it could be the Russians, could be the Chinese, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, are you telling us it's extraterrestrials or are you not? Like, what are you saying? Okay, you're saying it's UFOs. It's on the, and they wouldn't say it. And so I'm like, but then, okay, then finally they said, no, we don't think it's anything man-made. We don't think, and it's like, wow, okay, so you're basically admitting it. But like the hearings were so, like, not swept under the rug, but like just so nonchalant and like not focused on, you know, it's almost like, hey, we're going to testify on this. And then, okay, anyway, back to, and it's like, why wasn't that actually talked about more? Like, these guys are up saying, hey, we're validating all these years of saying aliens are fake. Like, why wasn't that talked about more?
For years and years, it was debated about how they're protecting the public from the information. You know, the public wouldn't be able to handle it, mass hysteria, yada, yada. And while they haven't just come out and shown like, you know, undeniable proof or anything like that, yeah, how come they're talking about it on news? You know, like you turn on the 6:00 evening news and they're talking about UFOs being real and the government's acknowledging it and everything. And everybody's just like,
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah. But, you know, to answer your question, I think, yes, I think there's a huge group of people that probably feel validated. But I think they're purposefully doing it this way so people don't think a lot about it. Now, I don't know exactly why they don't want people to think deeply about it, but I think they're making it very nonchalant and not airing it a lot for that reason. Now, because I remember I was watching, you know, some of the stupid network. I'm watching CNN and I'm like watching the way that they're like presenting it. And I'm like, number one, the guy's questioning almost everything that, you know, one of them was saying when he had him on interview. Well, you know, and then, you know, they're showing the real Congress hearings and it's like they show like literally 2 to 3 minute clip of it. And that's it. And I'm like, this isn't more significant than a 2 to 3 minute clip and like one headline, really? So yeah, it was very bizarre to me. But your other question, it's hard to say with that, man. I think you guys would know more about this than me. I think if they were to do that, I think, like you said, I think there's a lot of industries that would take a huge hit. I think they'd have to acknowledge stuff that would cost them a lot of money. And so, you know, when money plays it, see, with the UFO thing, it's not going to cost them any money to admit that. You know, it's like they're not losing money by admitting, hey, there maybe is something. I think with Bigfoot, you're talking about, okay, there's a population of these things that are living in our country. Are we going to, I mean, to measure their size, the population of them, the territory they need. I mean, you're talking about what, whole national parks that would be devoted just to them. I mean, it's like, I don't know, but it's a lot of, I know people say the logging thing. I just feel like there's a lot of issues that could come up admitting that. And then people would say, well, are you sure you didn't really know about this the whole time? And they would then say, they'd have to like face those questions, or how could you not realize this? So I don't know. I think there's other reasons with the Sasquatch that they wouldn't want to do that. Maybe 20, 30, 40 years down the line, if our country still exists, who knows? So, but I think it's less likely that they would do that, compared to UFOs, because these things are actually on our planet living with us right now. And you could go out and see them if they allowed themselves to be shown to you. I mean, what's your answer on that? Do you think they'd get to that point?
Man, I think there's no way that they don't know about these things.
Oh, yeah, 100% they know. Absolutely.
So it's really kind of a conundrum about, why don't they just say that they're out there? I get all this stuff that you mentioned, like obviously, we've talked about that over the years. There's various reasons why it would be bad for certain entities if Bigfoot was announced as really existing. But then there's also the aspect of, okay, well, what about the Yowie? What about the orang pendek? What about the Almas? This is a global phenomenon.
Right.
Canada isn't necessarily on the same page as the United States with stuff.
Yeah, very true. Most of them are probably up there. Probably a huge population. Not most.
Yeah. So, why is the whole world being quiet about them?
Yeah, so true, man. So true. That's another thing that disturbs me so much. It's like, we don't know. We don't know the answer. I definitely believe there's some kind of agency devoted to knowing about these things and doing whatever they do. But the reason, it's like, why don't they come out and just admit it? I don't know. I mean, you really would think there's something they could do to make it a positive for themselves. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, it is bizarre. I mean, I used to think, well, maybe do they care about them? And that's why, no, I don't think so. It can't be that. It's never anything positive with the government, dude. It's never anything positive. So that slipped out of my mind quickly. But what we do know is there's enough of them around that they're obviously not killing a good amount of them. I mean, it's you could probably pick an area right now, you yourself, and go in and have an encounter. So, I don't think they're as rare as people think. I think they're rare, but I don't think they're as rare also as we might think them to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. How does a 10-foot tall, 5-foot wide thing stay hidden?
I don't know. Matt, what do you think? Are they always moving, and they only sleep when there's like sense? Like, how do you think they get away with just not being seen? Do they go on tops of mountains? But see, by you, I know there's the Kiamichi, but Texas and stuff, there's really not that many mountains. So how do they stay hidden in places like that?
Talking to hunters, for instance, because one of the main things that skeptics, or not really skeptics, but just general non-believers,
right,
or even a lot of hunters, I've hunted all my life and I've never seen anything, or why don't hunters see them all the time? They're always out in the woods, at least in this part of the country. But I talk to hunters all the time that have seen them.
Exactly.
And they talk about how before they saw one, they did hear weird things out in the woods, but they just assumed it was something else. And I think that's what people do.
Yes.
Most people, like, take yourself, for instance. I'm going to use you as an example.
Yeah, please.
You don't know anything about the woods. You don't know anything about camping. So whenever you're out there, you're not going to know what belongs and what doesn't belong. And that was one of the big pieces of advice that I gave people was, whenever they would ask me, well, how do I become a researcher? What do I do? What do I look for? And I was like, the first thing you need to do is learn as much as you can about everything that's living out there. Because unless you know the vocalizations and the tracks and all the sign of what's already known to be living there, you're not going to be able to notice what doesn't belong. Like, if you don't know what a coyote sounds like, sure, you're going to hear Bigfoot,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right.
So it's sort of that train of thought. I think that hiding for them isn't as difficult as people think it is. Moving around, a lot of people think they migrate. I personally am on the fence about that one because I think they move around in a territory. I think they would move if they had to, but migration would be difficult for them to do because that just puts them in jeopardy of being spotted. The easiest way to stay hidden is to not move, and they are very good at not moving. And if you're a giant thing and you're laying down on the ground, most people are going to look right past you and just walk on by. They're not even going to look towards you. I mean, humans innately, if you're out in the woods, you're paying attention at the ground. You're looking down at your feet most of the time so you don't trip on stuff. You might look up every now and then, but unless you hear a noise or see movement, you're not going to turn and look at anything. So I think that helps them a lot. Moving around at night helps them a lot. Being in areas where people aren't helps them a lot. You know?
Right.
Simple things. I'm sure if somebody broke into your house, you would be able to navigate around your house in the pitch black dark easier than they would.
Very good point. Yeah. That's a really good analogy to use. Absolutely. Yeah. So true. And that's their house. They can do that. Yeah.
So where are you at with everything now? Are you going to continue pursuing this? Are you going to, continue research, going out into the field? Are you looking for people to go out with?
I think I have to. It's like a lifelong thing now that I've set on, and I don't think there's any going back. I think I have no choice. And it's like, I could, even if I wanted to, dude, I can't get out. I'm always thinking about Sasquatch. Always. Like, I'm driving down the road if there's a lot of woods in the area, and I just picture myself seeing one. Like, it's just part of me now. So I know at some point I'm going to do it. I'm definitely not ready, if I ever will be, to do it on my own. I know some guys go out in the woods on their own, which, hey, more power to them. That would be my easiest because I wouldn't have to worry about finding people. I could just go do it myself. I'm definitely not ready for that. So if I can find, I haven't looked, man. I've been like, it's one of those things where like, if the fear's there, I'd like avoid it. And then life gets lifey, you get busy and stuff. So
it does.
I do want to get back there. So like, for example, though, like if I had a community of people, like let's say just for argument's sake, if I lived in Oklahoma, like down the street from you, I would beg you, hey, Matt, like if you're ever going out, can you teach me? Can you take me? I would feel so much more comfortable because you know what you're doing. Now up here, it's like, I barely even know anybody that camps because my circle, my people aren't. Now there's a ton of people in this area that do it. I mean, you just go up north, like it's like Jersey has woods, New York has woods, you know that. So yeah. I in my circle, like where I'm at, like I'm not in those areas, so I don't really know those kinds of people. So I really would have to search maybe online or something. I remember I got into contact with a couple guys through Shannon or something. We just never linked up. We kept meeting to, it never happened. So I guess if I made it a priority, I could. I really want to, man. I do. I want to keep learning. I want to keep going. It's just a need. Like, it's like I have to have the encounters. Like, it's like that weird feeling. It's like, you just have to have them. It's like, well, what's it going to do? I don't know. You're not going to see them probably, but you just have to have the encounters. Like, I have that urge. And so, yeah, I do plan to do it. When? I don't know.
I told people for years that I got into this for answers, and I kept going for answers, trying to get answers, trying to understand what I saw, what I experienced and everything. But at this point in my life, I've started to come to the realization that I'm not looking for answers. I'm looking for closure.
Closure. Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of witnesses are looking for, is just that closure, finding people to share their stories with that have experienced something similar or are just willing to accept what they're trying to tell them.
Right.
Because something very traumatic happened to you. You experienced something sensational that not very many people on the planet have experienced.
Right.
And I want to let you know how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing that story with me, sharing your Bigfoot story with me, and putting yourself out there like that, because I know it's not easy. It's not an easy thing at all. And I hope you are finding a little bit of help in it. And I hope you understand that just by coming on these shows and sharing your story and letting people know what you experienced, you're helping a lot of people out there.
That really helps, man. Thank you. Yeah. And once again, thanks for having me. And we've already been over how it helps me, but if I can help others too, yeah, that's amazing. And I know when I heard their stories, it always helped me. So yeah, I know it can. And yeah, dude, thanks so much for having me on. I've been meaning to come on to your show for a long time. I just didn't muster up the courage to send that email, you know? So
yeah, man, absolutely. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. If you're out there and you have your own story to share and you'd like to come on the show or just talk to me about it, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out bigfootcrossroads.com. Brand new website, new merch. Go check it out. Grab something. Every little bit helps. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.